Welcome back to Geeky Reviews. I'm your host, Mike Wilkerson, and this is going to be my review for Season 1, Episode 5 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. titled The Girl in the Flower Dress. This episode premiered back on October 22nd, 2013. It opens on the streets of Hong Kong as a street performer named Chan Ho-yin entertains a small audience with his pyrokinetic abilities. Under disguise of a street magician, Chan is enraged with some people in the audience that are skeptical of his abilities, leading him to displaying his abilities in public. One of the members of the audience, Reina, however, is intrigued by his abilities, and Chan follows her back to her hotel room where he is abducted. I was wondering if she was going to be some sort of predictable villain of the week where she ends up experimenting on Chen. And it's, to my surprise, because it's a superhero show, it's pretty much what happened. Like, she takes him, she wants to test on him, she's really intrigued. The only reason I said that, it's not that I predicted it really, it's just that she was really nice in her demeanor, and nobody in that, nice demeanor kind of way, unless you have some sort of unless you don't have some sort of secret ulterior motive, is ever going to be that nice to you. So I was curious, and to my surprise, she is shown a lot like she's really nice and all this kind of thing, and she's brought back up when we meet another person in this episode, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, let's just say she's a common theme of her being intrigued by a lot of interesting things that happen throughout this episode. So back on the bus, I should say, actually Ward and Skye first, they're playing Battleship just as a nice little bonding moment between the two of them, which I really liked, and it adds some levels of hurt for later in this episode because he actually stands up for Skye, which was surprising to me because all this time Ward has been really skeptical of Skye joining S.H.I.E.L.D. because of her past with the Rising Tide and hacking, uncovering S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secrets, that kind of thing. So he's actually this is the first time he's actually really believed in her, that she doesn't have a secret agenda, which makes him hurt more, which I'll get to a little bit later in this episode too. But basically, on the bus, news of Chan's abduction leads to Coulson to believe Skye as an operative of Rising Tide. He hacked into S.H.I.E.L.D. servers and leaked his location. To prove her innocence, Skye tracks down the source of the leak to a place in Austin, Texas, there's a guy named Miles Lydon that's living down there. The team goes to Austin to apprehend the hacker, but Lydon is unable to evade capture, only to find Skye, his protege, in his apartment. After a brief argument, they have sex. I was surprised that Skye would compromise this whole thing, would just risk the idea of compromising this whole investigation that S.H.I.E.L.D. has conducted on Miles this episode, getting too close to him, that kind of thing. I get they have a past and that type of thing, but it was in a way idiotic for her to do that. I know what they're kind of going for, but again, it's still kind of idiotic for Skye to do that. To my surprise, they end up having an agent, Melinda May, waiting for her outside of the door when she's looking for her top or whatever after they've had sex, that kind of thing. I was expecting something similar to that happened in the previous episode when he went to apprehend Akeelah in her hotel room. But this episode, I was expecting it to be the same way where she would be going to Skye and apprehending it. But it's actually revealed that Coulson sent May to her, which makes more sense, which I appreciate, because if it was the same way, I don't think it would have hit more, because I know that this episode is more about the team aspect of it and them being honest with each other, especially Skye towards Coulson. So especially with her past with the Rising Tide, that kind of thing, her coming clean with all that. So I feel like it works a lot better that Coulson sent her versus May just showing up and saying, "Oh, I got you," because I feel like May doesn't know too much about her without her doing some sort of investigation off screen. So I'm glad that Coulson actually sent her. In S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, however, Lydon remains flippant over his crimes, claiming that he gave information to the world. He and Skye then start arguing inside the box, a former quoting the Rising Tide manifesto. Skye remains serious about Chan's situation. So Skye is obviously trying to keep her job this episode, which I appreciate. She's trying to stay with S.H.I.E.L.D. They present this interesting dynamic between Miles and Skye, that Miles is totally against S.H.I.E.L.D. and what they stand for, and especially him being a hacker, that type of thing. And he just wanted to build a life with Skye this episode. takes like money he used, or take money he got after selling some information regarding Shield and his past and Rising Tide to somebody that paid over $1 million. That, and it again, it goes back to like hurting Ward, that type of thing, because Ward brings in the deposit slips and, you know, finds out Skye's secrets. But Skye totally disagrees with them, which I was actually on board with because I was more on her side. I don't feel too bad for Miles. I understand that sometimes like Shield gets in the way and they cover things up and they don't always do the right thing, but they're trying to, and that's what a lot of the show is about, is like trying to fix the mistakes of Shield's past. From what I'm gathering this episode, that type of thing. So it's really nice to just say that she's trying to really stick with Shield despite the circumstances between her, Coulson, and obviously probably even Ward, I would say, and Ming. Skye's angry that he lied to her about the money and that kind of intentions to give that information away with the money for understandable reasons. Leiden defends that he checked that it wasn't an evil corporation manipulating him and traced the money to environmentalist group. When he mentions centipedes as part of the group research, Ward and Skye share a disturbed look and realize too the culprits are Project Centipede. Back in Hong Kong, Reina convinces Chen to help her by making him think that she will turn into a superhero called Scorch. This is the first time we actually get like the whole supervillain named Scorch type thing. I've never really heard of this person in the comics, so this was new to me. But from what I've seen, like, it does remind me of Johnny Storm, Johnny Storm, or the Human Torch, I should say. Or if you also want to say like Iron Fist, he kind of has that Fire Fist, that type of thing. So it does have it where the heat does not affect him and doesn't hurt him in a way, at least at the beginning of it. But as he gets experimented on by her, and he gets like injected with like this extremist stuff, it actually ends up like making him be able to feel pain, which was interesting. They really do try to do a thing with Chen this episode where Shield tries to save him, but he ends up turning on Shield, and they have this whole big action sequence of basically him burning the scientist alive that experimented on him, turns on. I wasn't expecting too much from Chen, just because I feel like the more villain of the episode was the girl in the flower dress experimenting on people, but in a way it turns into revenge, and then Shield has to stop it. So it's an added layer, which I actually do appreciate. I'm not going to lie, because I feel like it would have been too flat if it was just some girl just experiment on people. I think she also, like, it also mentioned that Leiden had an encounter with her, with this girl in the flower dress later in the episode, which I was surprised by. And I was surprised that she was like really interested in his hacking abilities. I feel like it made more sense that she was more interested in Chen's fire abilities because it was actual power versus some guy that's just hacking on a computer. I don't really know. I just don't think it hits well that hard enough. That type of thing. One thing that was interesting is that I think it was the same. One thing I will say that was interesting is at the Centipede plays, when they were experimenting with extremist stuff, the doctor, I believe, is the same one that actually researched on Mike Peterson in the pilot in LA, which was interesting. I didn't see that like kind of tie-in happening, but it ended up happening. Meanwhile, Agent Coulson and Mei Quan break into Project Centipede Hong Kong headquarters to rescue Chen. Chen, now fully embracing Scorch identity, rejects Shield's help. Again, this was the idea. I was interested in why he was rejecting it, but he again goes back to the idea of him wanting to be one of the greats this episode, like Captain America. He didn't really want to be a hero, so I guess he just wanted to be kind of like a villain. And I guess that's it tracks with his character. So on one hand, I was surprised that he wouldn't accept it because he was in so much pain, but as he started embracing it, I could start seeing the more over the top, meaning like, yeah, okay, he's going to want to keep his power. He doesn't want Shield's help. He understands what their help is per se, and it's not something he's interested in. So he ends up burning the doctor alive, turning into Chris. This leads the whole thing where they break. They take Miles out of handcuffs so he can hack and have the fire go up against up the vents and out the chutes up top so they can escape, that type of thing. Because they can't really save Quan. The idea is like they can't really save him. It's too late. He's gone too mad. He's pushed too far into villainy, so he can't really like be saved. Coulson rejects it, saying like by the end of it being like, well, you can save somebody if you get there in time. I was kind of on the fence. I feel like he couldn't have been saved either way. It's just kind of sad. But back on the bus, Coulson leaves Light in Hong Kong. He doesn't take him back to Austin, Texas, which was funny. But they basically put a bracelet on both Skye and Landon because they don't trust him, that type of thing. Especially Landon. So he can't really use tech anymore. It takes that ability away from him anymore. And this is where you kind of find out that Skye, comes clean about working with the Rising Tide. It has something to do with his parents, which has some info, which S.H.I.E.L.D. has some info on them that was redacted. And I felt this to be kind of just out of nowhere. Like, we never really got a sense of who Skye's parents was. So just to be, that's the reason why. I understand their motive. Like, this is kind of like giving them some backstory, which we'll probably go into a little bit later in the season with her and her parents and why she ends up like working for the Rising Tide and then joining S.H.I.E.L.D. and that kind of thing. It wasn't to compromise any sort of investigation. It was to like help find their parents, that type of thing, what happened to them. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. But it does just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, I wish that we would have had some more information about it. But Coulson actually agrees to help her try to find what happened to her parents with all this redacted info that S.H.I.E.L.D. has on them. This is all she has left. This is why she joined the Rising Tide, that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it was out of place. They could have given her an explanation, but I also can't think on the top of my head what else that explanation could be besides giving her a more personal reason to why she does it. So I think like if it was tied to Miles, it probably would have been more weaker. So if it was more tied to her parents, it probably would have been stronger reason why she's doing this, that type of thing. But I don't know. It just felt kind of convenient to me. But overall, I would say this episode was probably my favorite episode of the season so far. It was stuff I wasn't expecting for the villain. Some things were predictable, yes, like the villain, who the girl in the flower dress was, that type of thing. Something I have to come like accept with superhero media, but overall, I thought this was a much better episode than like the last few episodes. This was more exciting. That kind of almost delves into like metahuman type territory and I feel like it works best with this show versus like something like The Flash. I feel like this kind of works a little bit better with this show. But let me know what you guys think. What was your favorite and least favorite part of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, Episode 5? And if you enjoyed the review, as always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys in the next GEEKY Reviews video. Peace.